Greetings, Patriots. I'm sure those are fighting words for some people for me to dare call you a patriot. But if you're watching this, who I'm really talking to are the people who love their country. We are at a point where it's time to go public with a little more information on what we've been fighting with the North Carolina State Board of Elections to do and to care about. We've been fighting this fight for a long time, but I'm going to give you, rather than go through the whole thing, which would be, it could be a subject of a way too long book. It'll be just some information that will help you understand kind of where we're at with these toads. All right, starting off with an email we sent them. We sent this email on August 27th, Thursday afternoon, kind of late, but we sent it to their PIO, Patrick Gannon, as a CC copy, to their head attorney, Caitlin Love, and to the entry-level email address to the New York State Board of Elections. An email address I've used in the past and gotten a response from them, for the record. I sent them this email with a file on it. You might be able to see it. It says NYNC final secure. So it's a file that shows people, it gives them the results of an investigation that we've conducted. We've done this before. Oh, by the way, we CC copy. Well, never mind. That's a whole other story. Okay, we've done this before with Florida and North Carolina, and we went through an entire process, and we found that election officials tended to, I'm told from people on the inside, they made quite a few criminal referrals from our data, and then lazy or corrupt or chicken, take your pick, district attorneys decided not to bother prosecuting them. So we had very few prosecutions in total. We turned over close to 150 cases in Florida and North Carolina, and got a spanking total of 4 confirmed prosecutions. A couple of them we knew about that were declined, and some for reasonable. One of them was a 91-year-old man who had voted over a 12-year period. He'd been doing this. He needed to stop, but I did not want. They asked me, "Do you want to prosecute this guy?" And I said, "I don't want it written anywhere on Wikipedia or anywhere saying that Jay Delancey ever advocated for the prosecution of a 90-year-old or 91-year-old person who committed voter fraud." I just looked at them and said, "Could you please make sure he stops doing this?" And they said, "Yeah, we can take care of that." So that message got conveyed to the district attorney through the appropriate channels, and we're done. But there were other cases that were not nearly that good. One of them was now a U.S. attorney named Andrew Murray, who we had 2 cases of voter fraud when he was a DA in Charlotte. And Brother Murray, we had a meeting with him. He refused to prosecute either one of them. And yeah, he'll tell you, he'll give you a lot of excuses, and he made them. But I'm sorry, I just don't believe him. At any rate, he's a U.S. attorney, and I'm just some election watchdog guy. So there. Okay, fast forward 2020, actually. Look at my calendar. A couple of months ago, we finally were able to wrap up some work that was on the database, and very complicated data analytics and expensive, using public data to help us confirm what we had suspected. And we found another way to find people who had voted in North Carolina and New York this time instead of Florida. We decided to pick on New York. Why New York? Well, because the data from New York was solid. It had the dates of birth, but also because a lot of people, New York is the #1 place people are from when they come to North Carolina. It's the #1 migration state, if you will. Just one of those fun facts that according to one of our data guys, he found that information somewhere. that more people come from New York to North Carolina than from any other state. Currently, that's the case. It's also a fun fact that more people come from Illinois to Tennessee than from any other state. So it's just one of those things that when people are leaving those deep blue, corrupted, ruined states, where do they go? People in New York come to North Carolina. So love it or not, hopefully they'll remember why they left New York and not vote for the same policies that screwed up their state. But that's a whole rabbit trail. We sent them this information. You can read it. I said, I'm Jay Delancey, founder and director of a North Carolina-based election watchdog group dedicated to open and honest elections. Over the past several months, our teams of analysts have examined voting and voter records in North Carolina and New York to uncover evidence suggesting that up to 124 duly registered voters in New York and North Carolina may have committed interstate double voter fraud. While we lack the resources to accuse anybody of a crime, we have refined public information well enough to conclude they either voted or were victims of voter impersonation fraud. There's no other way around this. It's one or the other. I'm going to cut to it. I'm not going to read to you everything here because while I was rambling, you may have even read it. But we are confident in this data that one of those two conditions exists. Now, we are not accusing any specific individual of a crime. And it says, while we are not doing that, any signed voter records may become material evidence. This letter serves to provide notice of your respective agency's duties to preserve documents, information, data, and electronic or digital communication, which may be relevant to impending, if I can read right, impending litigation. We really sincerely hope this statement got their attention and they will know that they cannot destroy that information. Now, I just wanted to pause on that just to make sure you see it, they see it, the whole world sees it. We've asked them not to destroy these key signature documents that would otherwise be within their purview to destroy effective September 6th, which is exactly 22 months after the last federal election, the 2018 federal election in November of that year. We need that information. So we're politely asking them not to destroy it. Now, as an administrative function that we exercise at the Voter Integrity Project is this last part. It says, per our security protocols, the voters are listed in an accompanying encrypted spreadsheet. I will transmit the password via text or voice message after a confirmed employee from your agency contacts us. If no such request is proffered, we are forced to interpret non-response as an indication that your agency has no interest in prosecuting voter fraud. Okay. It's a little stronger than, let us know if you don't get this. But that said, I waited. It was a plan, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. Waited 6.5 days, so nearly a week. And then I forwarded a second email. I forwarded this email in a second email. Dear sir or ma'am, both of your agencies' non-response to my prior notice is disturbing, so we'll give this version of the email a wider audience and kindly ask that you withhold destruction of any election material that was signed by a voter in order to cast a vote in the 2018 election. Then I elaborated, said material could be in the form of election day signature forms, absentee ballot return envelopes, or any other documents signed in the process of obtaining a ballot. Depending on your individual state's laws and court orders, etc., federal guidelines allow such documents to be destroyed 22 months after the prior federal election. Since that earliest possible destruction date puts us at Sunday, September 6th, 2020, we respectfully ask that you issue a directive to prevent their destruction. They will be needed in potential litigation. Respectfully, Jay Delancey, blah, blah, blah. We sent this information to the assembly member in New York, Zabrowski, who oversees government operations. He's chairman of the Government Operations Committee. And we also sent this to that individual's North Carolina counterpart, Representative Cleveland. And we sent it to some other people. That's Eric Shawn of Fox News, John Fund. Apparently, he's no longer at the Wall Street Journal, but we wanted to be sure they knew who he was. John is more freelance now, and I think he works for National Review Online. At any rate, I didn't have that address, so I sent it to John's Gmail address, and to our attorney, and to another attorney on the record. I don't have Brian's. I thought it had his email address, so I scooted past it. But Brian Levesque is our attorney in North Carolina, and J. Christian Adams from Public Interest Legal Foundation is an attorney who represents us on occasion. We thought he might be interested in this material. And Logan Churchwell, who's also with the Public Interest Legal Foundation. So our concern is voter fraud. Are these people interested in pursuing? Oh, and we also sent this to the Enforcement Division of Elections in New York, and sent it directly to Caitlin Love. A funny thing happened. We sent this email. We sent it before the 6th of September. We sent it September 4th. That was the Friday before the Sunday that information could be destroyed. We also sent it at 10:37 a.m. And now I'm going to pause the recording here to dredge up an email. And I want to skip right to it without watching you, having you painfully watch me look for it. So remember the time, what time was it? I lost it. 10:37 a.m. on the 4th of September. All right, magically through the magic of Zoom, we fast forward to a different email received at 11:41 that same day. This one is from the Director of Elections, Karen B. Bell. Let's see. It's a forwarded of a forward. It's from Representative Cleveland. She CC copied her attorney and her PIO. They never did ask me. They never asked any of us from our organization for the code to the file. So they don't know who these voters are, nor do they care. So Bell wrote back a little under an hour after we sent the previous email, and it was in response to email 8:49 a.m. to that Representative Cleveland sent Thursday morning to Karen Bell after seeing our press release on it from Wednesday night. So our press release, you can look at it on our website if you like. Actually, I will go to that in a moment. Or better yet, we'll go to it right now. And you'll probably be asking, well, if you're going to do it, let's see it. Okay. And there it is. All right. VIP calls for voter fraud summit, another absentee ballot vote fraud. Well, let's see. Maybe I should refresh this page and then we will see it. So bear with me. This press release prompted Representative Cleveland to send and we did an update on that later. This is a picture of Representative Cleveland. But for now, this was the article that we posted that Representative Cleveland apparently saw and forwarded Officials ignore evidence of interstate double voter fraud. It's on our website, voterintegrityproject.com, and look for the image of the iceberg. And that's kind of the message. Now, what we did not do was we did not go into numbers, and everyone wants to know the numbers, and I'll tell you why we're not going to reveal the numbers. Number one, it's none of your business, but we went into them in general. And so we have, of all the illegal New York, North Carolina votes found, 67% came from the 2016 election, 33% from 2018, and a stunning 7% showed deliberate intent by voting in both elections. Partisan breakdown was 61% Democrat or Democrat leaning, and 25% Republican or Republican leaning, and 13% were cats and dogs, like the my rent's too damn high party, and just stuff like that. So we could squint our eyes and say it was hundreds of voters. I'm not going to give you a number, because what we found, well, let me just say one thing about this. We want to be clear. We're not accusing anyone. Oops, that's an image. We are not accusing anybody of committing an individual crime. We're not accusing any specific individual of a crime. Any signed voter records may become material evidence. This letter serves to provide notice of your respective agency's duty to preserve documents, information, data, and electronic or digital communication, which may be relevant to impending litigation. Okay, that said, we are confident that this data is the same person in New York and North Carolina voting in both states in the same election. Not 100, more than 100. And the way that broke down, some of them actually voted in 2 elections. If you've done this and you're in New York or North Carolina, my advice is for you to stop doing it. That said, we wonder if anybody will actually care that you've done it. Let me show you how complicated this stuff gets and what they're going to need in order to investigate this. Ultimately, what it comes down to is something we call a 4-signature match. They will need to subpoena or otherwise examine the documents that are signed in 4 places. Is it the New York voter registration and the North Carolina voter registration? First off, do those 2 signatures match, or are they enough characteristics where you go, okay, it's the same person? This is stuff we cannot do. They have to do. So they'll have to look at these and go, yeah, it looks like the same person. Then you look at these documents. This person appears to be voting in person in New York. Okay. The signature, yeah, it looks like it's the same person. They're signing something on election day. Most states, Virginia does not, but most states require you to sign something on election day, or an absentee ballot, or the envelope or something in order to get a ballot. Now, the same as in North Carolina. So we are contending the same person did it in both states. So in order to prove that, the people with badges, with stinking badges, would have to look and say, yep, it's the same signature in all 4 cases. Now, we had one FBI agent explain to us that this is called low-hanging fruit because it's the same person, no doubt. Our problem is that in Florida, when we did this, they dismissed a lot of the referrals as being an administrative error. Yeah, they signed the wrong line on the poll book. I wonder what they actually signed. In North Carolina, they the election official will hand you a card and say, if all this information is correct, sign it. That card has your name and address on it. Might even have your date of birth, but don't quote me. At any rate, you sign that card, then you go over to the ballot table, you trade that card for a ballot. That's a good procedural safeguard. So how would that be an administrative error? You check into the polls, you give them your name and address, they pull the card out, they tear it out, they hand you the card, you look at it, you sign it. Administrative error. Okay, so what are they calling an administrative error? We would say it's probably when there's a 3-signature match, meaning somebody else voted. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Where that same situation, it's the same signature in New York, North Carolina, same person registered. And then the New Yorker voted here, but in North Carolina, something else happened. That instead of my voting, somebody did it for me. This is our concern, that this is happening a lot. And we think this is the only way to get to the bottom of this is for people with badges to care to investigate that. Any law enforcement agencies who want to investigate this in your state with North Carolina, give us a call. We'd be happy to show you how to do it and happy to coach you along in it, because there's more to it than what I'm going to tell you in this video. But at the end of the day, what you've got is a dead voter with a live accomplice. So the live accomplice registered to vote in North Carolina. A real live human being registered to vote in North Carolina. It may be your Aunt Bessie who came down for souls to the polls. It may be some union buddy who came down with an incentive to say, hey, you come down here and do this. You don't ever have to vote there, just register. We'll take care of the rest. And if you bother doing that, we've got a condo in Myrtle Beach. We'll hook you up with, so you can have a little mini vacation, spend a couple of days down there on us. Or it might be some of these true believers who we occasionally catch. Take the criminal enterprise formerly known as Acorn. They were caught in numerous states. I'm going to digress here. I could talk about it, or I could show you. Well, let me give a quick digression. First off, there is such thing as voter fraud conspiracy. There's a great story written here and a grand jury report that came out of it. You can look this up. Look up 100,000 smoke, fire, 100,000, and you'll get it. But it's a Heritage Foundation document written by our good friend, Hans von Spakovsky. Hans knows a thing or two about voter fraud, and we love him dearly. Now, Hans, this wasn't a conspiracy theory. This was a conspiracy. Why do we call it that? Because 63 people were convicted. So it's a little more, it's not a theory when you get 63 people convicted in one operation. And I won't recount that article. What bothers me is you move forward. Okay, this is not going to cooperate, so I'm going to have to go into slideshow view. Okay. Oh gosh, you move forward and you see Acorn back in 2008 got caught doing all sorts of mischief. This was in Ohio. It's 73 voter registration forms over a 5-month period. They caught them. They caught that one. And in other states, there were other cases of it. That was the Ohio, duplicate voter registration. Nevada, fabricated forms. Missouri, hundreds of questionable or duplicate voter registrations. Pennsylvania, forgery and other irregular. These are all Acorn, guys. And this is a story from actually 2004 in an event that preceded Acorn. This was an individual from a group called Public Interest Research Group. They were a left-wing Marxist group inspired by Ralph Nader. This guy got caught in 2004 doing it. Our concern is these people are caught by exception. There's no standardized process. It's just the crook was so stupid that even the Board of Elections, as low-level intellect as they are, they were able to find these people. Meanwhile, in 2008, there was some Acorn activity here. I bet you didn't know that. I don't know if you can see this. Let me move it. October of 2008. Whoa, what's this? Suspected in voter fraud suspected Acorn. This was basically a PR piece for Acorn with a lot of spin, giving their side of the defense on why they say, oh, it's just an anomaly. No, the anomaly was somebody got caught. Follow up, it's hard to read, but in Durham County, exactly 120 suspects formed, exactly. And in Wake County, exactly, it's hard to read, but it was exactly 30. There, 150 were found right before the election. That was admitted October 14th of the 2008 election. So Acorn was all across the state, but only in Raleigh and Durham were any of them found. Okay, we're concerned about the ones that got away. So how many of those? Oh, and the director of elections named Gary Bartlett said, it's hard to read, so I'll read it to you. No other local election officials has alerted the state office to Acorn-related problems. The head of Mecklenburg elections and head of elections in Mecklenburg said that county did not have problems with Acorn forms. Okay, they didn't have problems. I'm glad. No other local elections officials alerted state. So if there were any problems, we didn't see them. That's what they're saying. And I hate to sound so cynical, but that is something we're concerned with, especially Gary Bartlett, a big Democrat who'd been in the job for 20 years. I don't see fraud, especially if it's Democrats committing that fraud. We are a voter integrity project, ladies and gentlemen, and nobody can accuse us of getting prosecutions of just Democrats. In fact, we've never gotten a Democrat prosecuted, though we've turned over evidence. We've gotten criminal referrals for Democrats. But funny thing we've learned is nobody in North Carolina prosecutes Democrats. They have prosecuted Republicans that we turned in, but they don't prosecute Democrats. We also learned that with the McRae-Dallas debacle from 2018 and Mark Harris, Congressman Mark Harris, a guy who was duly elected and got tricked into taking the stand, and a really creepy guy named Mark Elias, a big Democrat lawyer, managed to trick Harris into committing perjury. And Harris wound up resigning because they threatened to prosecute him for stepping in their perjury trap. It was ugly and evil, and that's how they roll. Dallas was a Democrat. There were, we know of, and I'll go to court and testify to it, that we know of at least five other organizations in that congressional district doing the exact same work that Dallas was doing in that election. None of them got prosecuted. Why? Because they were Democrats, and the State Board of Elections only wanted to get Dallas. They were single focused on him because Dallas was a Republican. So he was doing the same tactics. By the way, it wasn't illegal unless you break the law, but the tactics as Dallas described it and alleges he did it was not illegal. And this is not about Dallas. I'll go there some other time. My point here is that Acorn was on the ground. A few of them were caught, and the rest of them, nobody had any problems with them. This is not the same as saying there were no other illegal Acorn registrations. It was that election officials had no problems with the registrations. Okay, so we fast forward to this. I'll go to the next slide. No, this is a long video and it's getting longer, and I apologize, but we want to go through this a little bit. There's that circular reasoning about problems. In an article the New York Times wrote, smearing North Carolina, a right affable chap named, I think it's Jim Ruttenberg, said, in-person voter fraud in which you impersonate someone or try to vote more than once or at all, if you are ineligible, is almost entirely non-existent in the United States. Okay, stop there. It's almost entirely non-existent. Why? Because of an exhaustive Loyola Law School study, which could only find 31 credible allegations of fraud in a 1 billion vote sample. They only found 31 cases. Now, I will save this, bookmark that, and we'll talk about it later. But the fact that they almost found something, they looked for something, maybe, maybe not. The evidence they used was credible allegations, and credible allegations, I spoke with the author of that study, And he admitted that credible allegations is kind of a problem that he has to continue to work through. That's his name, only he looks a lot better now because he shaved his head. So he's a lot more handsome with a shaved head. Or at least when I saw him, he had that. His name is Justin Levitt, and I'll leave it at that. For now, we'll go back to Mr. Levitt later. But what we'd like to see, it's really the problem with it basically is right there. That if the prosecutors know nothing and see nothing, then they're not going to find fraud. They're not going to confirm fraud. So then really smart people like Jim Ruttenberg of the New York Times will reach the vacuous conclusion that it's almost entirely non-existent. Why? Well, because we didn't see it. Well, what kind of lenses were you using? You ever seen that movie Predator? There's certain lenses you have to use to see the predator. Voter Integrity Project uses those lenses as best we can, but we are limited in what we can do because of, well, we're not law enforcement organizations. So we have to rely on law enforcement organizations to do it. And it's very difficult to find those organizations that will do it. So in this case, we sent the evidence to North Carolina and New York. And in both cases, all we've heard back from them was crickets. But of course, once we got our a sympathetic bully to go after them, which was Representative George Cleveland, Karen Bell responded to that with an email. And I could read that email to you, but I won't. She throws me under the bus for what we did to her. We played her to see if she would acknowledge our communication to her, which she did not, except to backhandedly acknowledge it to Representative Cleveland. New York has still not acknowledged it. So we're wondering, are they going to destroy this stuff and then say, oh, we never saw his email? That's why we reached out to so many people in New York. And so far, we don't know what's happened, but we'll poke that bear later. I want to close with one other aspect to this that tells me how wicked the North Carolina boards of elections are, and I want to be sure you're seeing this. So I'm going to stop share and reshare a document. I'm skipping ahead to the coup de grace. The issue is voter impersonation fraud. And the State Board of Elections in 2016 produced a much ballyhooed, they actually, their PIO, bless his heart, said, you're going to love this, Jay. You're going to love it. We're putting out this report. You're going to love it. Yeah, I loved it. If I was born last night, I would love it. Post-election audit report. We'll go more into this later, but this stupid report, it's purely propaganda written by Kim Strack. When she goes over much in this report, I'm going to key in on just a couple of things they found. On the issue of voter impersonation fraud, God, I sound like Bill Barr when I say that. I was born in North Carolina, and now I say fraud like our Attorney General, because I love the way he says it. Look, while no audit exists to catch all possible cases of voter impersonation, comma, double voter, and deceased voter audits may detect such cases. I can't read, but I'll try it again. While no audit exists to catch all possible cases of voter impersonation, comma, double voter and deceased voter audits may detect such cases. Okay, we conducted a double voter audit, only we used interstate double voter audit, where North Carolina uses in-state double voter audit. They're competent enough to do that. I'll leave it at that. Deceased voter audits, they're competent enough to do that. Interstate double voter audits, well, the jury is still out as to whether they're competent to do it. But let's back up and look at this first half of that sentence. While no audit exists to catch all possible cases of voter impersonation. Wow. Well, crud. There we go. Think about that. No audit exists to catch all possible cases of voter impersonation. Let's refer back to, well, I won't do it to you. Refer back to what I showed you a moment ago. I will show it to you because it means that much. Then we look at what did Mr. Levitt say? What did our boy? Oops, crud. All right, what did our boy say in New York? Our boy being the journalist, Jim Rittenberg. What did Jimmy say? It's almost entirely non-existent. Levitt found 31 credible allegations. The question becomes, how do you know this is non-existent when the State Board of Elections in North Carolina admitted no audit exists to catch all possible cases? What did we catch? We caught double voter. We've caught deceased voter in the past. But our problem with that is if it's a deceased voter, there's nobody to prosecute. Think about that. Some dead guy shows up on the voting records as having voted. What do? There's nothing you can do. And this is our problem here. So really, let me review this one more time and to wrap up. Okay, so you get a matching signature. In order to get a prosecution, you need 4 signature match. You need the signature match in all 4 of these situations, both on the registrations in both states and in the document they signed on election day. But if you don't get 4, you've got nobody to prosecute. All you've got is evidence of a crime. What is the crime? Well, in North Carolina, the guy didn't vote. Instead, somebody voted for him. Pretty good. So this is really a dead voter with live accomplices. So somebody knew that voter was on the record. Maybe they did it as an interstate double voter. We want some serious law enforcement, the kind who actually care enough to do their job and not care where the chips fall, whichever party. Whose ox does it gore? I don't care. I just want to get to the bottom of this so we can have honest elections. Because right now, anybody can walk in North Carolina and claim to be somebody else, and they've got a very good chance of getting away with the crime. This bothers me. Are they doing it? Very difficult to prove. Why? We can't film them, so we can't prove it. Okay, that's my problem. But for now, as the Board of Elections did say, double voter and deceased voter audits may detect such cases. So we want to start with that, and it will show it. It will detect it. And how? It will be a 3-signature match. That is how. So we need them to do their job and do it diligently. Don't sweep it under the rug, and then to come forward publicly and tell how they did it. So that's what we're looking to do with all this information. I'm sorry, that's a deep dive into what we do, but this is important for you to know this if you are a policy person in any state and wanting to understand how complicated this is and why the Wizards of Smart at the New York Times can get away with claiming that voter fraud is rare. Now, we'll have a lot more on this later in an upcoming movie, but for now, this is our problem. People who are, oh, dang it. Okay. People who are the smartest people in the room are going to tell you that there is no fraud because they didn't see it. And that is a problem. So moving forward, we would ask you to demand congressional level investigation, hopefully after with a Congress that actually cares about voter fraud. Because right now, we are going to get, if I'll put it this way, if the Democrats win in November, if they win control of the Senate, win the White House, we will get election reform, and we will be a third world country overnight, like Venezuela, because they are going to implement California-style election law nationwide per federal law. It is called H.R. 1, House Resolution 1. Nancy Pelosi has introduced it. She was the very first bill she introduced when she regained control of the House in 2018, and they have since been trying to sue and get those laws through hook or crook. But I guarantee you that's what's coming if the Democrats win in November. If the Republicans win control, this is where you, citizen patriot, have to become noisy and demand they get to the bottom of this. Instead of having a high-level commission with a bunch of politicians and know-it-alls, you got to have it with a bunch of nobodies that nobody knows, people like me, people like Linda Payne in California, Ed Nail in New Hampshire, Reagan George in Virginia. There are others, Ruth Weiss in California. There's several in California who know a great deal. Bring people who actually know what's going on at the state level, bring us to the table, and we'll be happy to show you what we've been doing for the last 9+ years in researching this. And we know a lot more about it than these politicians do. So that's what I would ask you to do. That's a takeaway. Now that you understand the problem, if you've sat through this entire video, God bless you. Be sure to hit the like button, share it, and maybe even kick in a donation. Go to our website, voterintegrityproject.com, and kick in $5 or something. We could use the encouragement. Put it a recurring document, and who knows, we might even stay alive after the election. At any rate, thanks for watching, and fight hard as if your life depends on it. Pray hard, because your life does depend on it.